Good morning, everyone. It's a fine day here in the East Coast. We're still alive. Contrary to what the news tells you, the East Coast is fine. We had two deaths. One lady was swept to sea as her house was built on rocks, stone foundation on the ocean. And unfortunately, the storm got her and swept her to sea. And the other person died while running a generator in their home. Some people don't have power. Most of us do. But let's get to it. How corrupt is the Canadian government? Well, I'm going to talk about some personal experiences first, and we'll talk about some news articles. I moved to Ottawa in 1998. I lived there for just shy of 10 years. I was dating this beautiful young lady, and she was a receptionist at a law office for a certain lawyer in the East End of Ottawa. I'm not going to say his name, but it will become clear. I found out that this young lady, one night we're laying in bed, she's like, I'm kind of seeing someone else. And I said, what do you mean? She's like, Dalton at work. And I was like, what? What? Dalton? Isn't that your boss? She's like, yeah, it is. And her and I went our separate ways. And she stalked me for 2 years. And when I called the police, they told me I should be flattered that a pretty young lady is stalking me. And stalkers aren't funny or sexy. But that was my first real experience with corruption, minus the time I was robbed by two Halifax police officers while standing at an ATM. That's a true story. They arrested me, and when I made a complaint, they came to my work and made some threats. But let's get into some things that are really disturbing. The Public Safety Minister in Canada, Marco Mendicino, a proven liar multiple times. As you know, during the trucker convoy, the government enacted what was called the Emergency Measures Act. It used to be called the War Measures Act. And when questioned about this, Marco Mendicino said there was threats of rape. I don't like that word, but that's the word he used, and I'm going to post a link via Viva Fry, his website. And he said there was verifiable threats of rape from the trucker convoy to women. And then a female member of parliament stood up, questioned Mr. Mendicino. Sorry, I have it written down. And she asked him, she's like, I walk through that trucker convoy every day. People seem nice. If it was so dangerous, why was I allowed to walk through there? And of course, he could give no answer. This is the same person who keeps calling modern sporting rifles assault rifles, assault style rifles. The man's a liar. Assault weapons, which are select fire weapons, technically. How do I know? Weapons tech for 23 and a half years. I kind of know what this stuff is. It's kind of my bread and butter, if you know what I mean. He kept calling these things assault-style weapons and then assault weapons. And assault weapons were banned in 1977. There's none in Canada, and if there is, they're locked in some old guy's safe. And when he dies, they basically get scrapped. I don't know about you, but I don't like when my politicians lie to me, especially when you catch them on it and they just change the subject. Justin Trudeau, when he was a teacher at, he was out in BC. His family or him, somebody, paid $2.25 million to a young lady younger than 15 for her silence and some sort of sexual relationship she had with a then 29-year-old future prime minister. You can Google this and find it. There's a couple news agencies that reported this, and they've never been sued for libel, defamation, slander. That tells me it's true. That's disturbing in many, many ways. Sorry, I'm a little under the weather. I'm just getting back from cold, a little stuffy, living off Buckley's and hate. But it's pretty sad that we catch these politicians openly lying about certain things. Do you know Justin Trudeau's mother killed a man while drunk? Do you know that? Hold on a second. I got a comment coming in. Let's have a look. You know who I'm talking about, don't you, Taylor? Yeah, I dated his secretary. We dated off and on for a little bit. She was a hot little thing. But when I found out she was screwing her boss, back then cell phones weren't very common. And she always had her boss's cell phone. You could always communicate with her, which was weird because we'd be out and about and he'd call and she'd be like, I got to drop you off. I got to go. I'd be like, okay. It was weird. Yeah. Thanks, Taylor. I appreciate that. Yeah, Margaret Trudeau was drunk driving down Aviation Parkway in Ottawa, ran over a man on a bicycle who died later in hospital. But because she wasn't read her rights on the side of the road, she beat the charges. You can look that up. It's factual. It's true. It's pretty disturbing. I used to drink a lot, an awful lot. Mostly when the military is calling me a neo-Nazi, a white supremacist, a terrorist, a subversionist. What else did they call me? They called me everything but a human being. And my former wife wasn't white. She's of mixed race, and I drank a lot back then. I don't really drink much now. I'll have like 2 or 3 beer in a weekend. That's about it. But anyway, I digress. Back to the corruption. You know our old environment minister? They called her Climate Barbie, McKenna, Catherine McKenna. You know when she's environment minister, she bought a Porsche and a Lexus. Neither one was electric. She's the lady who used to get flown from Ottawa to her cottage in Quebec and then drive 15 minutes to her cottage. This is on a government VIP plane. You can look this up also. Rebel News did an investigation into that, and people think that's why she suddenly retired. She also ate dogs, and she what was the other thing? Oh, she went to a child wedding in Indonesia. That tells me these people's what's we're looking for here? Brain injury day. Their rational thinking isn't all there. I travel a lot. I like other cultures. Would I eat a dog? No. My dogs are pets and they're family. Would I go to a child wedding? No. I find that kind of vile, and I do respect other people's cultures, but I am a North American, and that is wrong on many levels to my culture, so I just wouldn't attend. I grew up in Nova Scotia. We had a premier named John Buchanan. Now, I went to school with one of his daughters, and she was a nice person. He seemed like a nice guy. But we called him Honest John for a reason. I'll tell you about my first election I ever went to. I think I was 18, 19 years old, and the polling station was at my local elementary school. And I went in and made my vote. I voted conservative. I voted for John Buchanan because he was my neighbor. I mean, he lived down the street from me. And when I came out of the polling station, I guess we call it, this guy was in a station wagon. I remember because I had the wood paneling, the fake wood paneling on the side. And he asked me, he's like, can I ask who you voted for? And I said, yeah, sure, John. I voted for John Buchanan. And he gave me a little Mickey, a little like 1 ounce shot of booze. And I was like, is this how politics work? I guess it does. When I first moved to Ottawa, I was working at a company called National Grocery. It was a freezer warehouse place. First job I got, I was out of the military. I just needed the job when I moved to Ottawa. So that's what I did. And I met this guy at a house party one time. Me and a bunch of the guys that I worked with, one of them was having a house party. One of their friends showed up, and he ran a flower delivery business. But this guy was like, he had a lot of money for a young man, like a lot of money. And I asked him, I said, is the flower delivery business that good? He's like, oh, yeah, politicians. And back then, the high-tech boom, this is like early 2000, maybe 99, early 2000. Yeah, before I went to prison. So it'd be 98, sorry. The high-tech boom was just starting. And he said, yeah, a lot of these politicians and high-tech moguls, because there's money to be made. Trust me, Ottawa has 2 billionaires. Both are high-tech people. He's like, yeah, they're my biggest customers. And I said, well, what sort of flowers do you sell? Like, you must sell a lot of flowers. He's like, yeah, cocaine. And I was floored by that. I was kind of naive when I first moved to Ottawa. I met this young lady, and her and I went to a sex club one time. And it's kind of by invite only. And I'm not going to tell you where she worked, but she was a high-ranking federal government employee who was hot as balls. Just shockingly hot. I don't know what she's seen in me, maybe because I was a dirty, filthy outsider. I don't know. But we'd go to these sex clubs and I would see politicians, members of the media. Now, I'm not going to tell you which members of the media, but there was a gentleman who was very well known in the media. He was kind of Ottawa's darling of the media, who liked to bring young boys to these sex clubs. And when I say young boys, I don't mean 20, 21, 22 years old. I'm talking 16, bring young boys to these sex clubs. And when I say young boys, I don't mean 20, 21, 22 years old. I'm talking 16, 17 years old. Now, everyone knew about this, and no one even batted an eye. And as I said, I was very naive when I first moved to Ottawa. And I was taken back by all this. I really didn't know how to explain it to people. So when I'd be out with my friends and stuff, I'd be like, yeah, I went to this party with my little friend, and there was like politicians and members of the media there. And they're like doing fat lines of coke off each other's assholes. I wish I was kidding, but I'm not. It was just wild. And I was like, is this really the way the government is run? Because there was politicians there. I've always followed politics. Kind of a political animal, really. I find it fascinating. I'm fascinated that our government is so openly corrupt. They flaunt it in people's faces. The other thing about John Buchanan was he was known to get bags of money from certain groups. If you go to his Wikipedia page, I think it mentioned something there about $400,000 just handed to him one day over a counter. Don't quote me on that, but check his Wikipedia. It should still be there. And I know Wikipedia is bullshit and a lot of lies and garbage, but it's open sourced. So take it what it is. So we'll say allegedly handed bags of money. Can I prove this? No, I wasn't there. But it's open and it's online, so you can have a look. So we'll say it's an accusation of him getting bags of money. Much like Scott Bryson. I don't know if you guys know, but the Irving Shipyard in Halifax, the new Irving Shipyard that they got a $300 million grant to build. Now, the Irvings are one of the wealthiest families in Canada, but they had to get a grant, which is free money, from the government of Canada to build a shipyard. And Scott Bryson, allegedly, was known as the Irving Bag Boy, where he would hand the Irvings money, he would hand them contracts, and they would hand him bags of money. Is this confirmed? No, it's an allegation. But after so many allegations, people start to wonder how much of these allegations are actually true. I don't know. I'm just one person, and I like to surf the web and find things. As I said, I lived in Ottawa for many years, and it's disturbing to me that politics have gotten so corrupt. I know politicians who are so drunk. Yeah, I have met at least 2 politicians who are semi-functional alcoholics. These people make laws. They pass laws. Speaking of laws, there's currently one going through Parliament called C11, which is the Internet Censorship Law, which means people like me will be banned. And they're trying to say it's for saving the children, protecting the children, stopping disinformation, which is lies. Disinformation is lies. Let's be frank and honest about this. But who's the biggest liar on the internet? The government. I just watched a video. The head of the UN communications, whatever she is, was at this panel. And she said they got together with Google to make sure their version of climate change is the only version you can find online. And any dissenters are basically wiped off the internet. I will find that link and I'll try to post it. Carl Vernon, a British guy, he posted it on his YouTube page. How deep does the corruption go? Now, I know this is all about money. Money, unfortunately, will drive people to crazy lengths. I have seen people do horrendous things for money. If you think your politicians won't, during the trucker convoy, as we talked earlier about the Emergency Measures Act, where the government seized people's bank accounts, seized their cryptocurrencies. That is disturbing and should be disturbing to anyone. So if you do something the government doesn't like, they're going to seize your finances. Buy gold and silver, kids. Buy lots of gold and silver and stack it deep. Stack it. Oh. Sorry, I'm still getting over that cold. It's not COVID. Never have COVID. One of those dirty unvaxxed. Dirty unvaxxed. Put me in a camp. Put me in a camp, Justin. Sorry. But yeah, there's a lot of lies in politics, a lot of corruption. I'm going to post some links in the description of this video once I'm done. I want people to question things. Oh, sorry, real quick. The other thing about C11, or not C11, the Emergency Measures Act, there has to be an investigation afterwards. And it has come to light via the Senate, which is the house of sober second thought. And if you can find a sober person in the Senate, you point them out to me. I knew a senator, also a drunk, a hard drunk, like stumbled to work, stumbled out of the car drunk. He once backed over a guy on a bicycle. He survived, the guy on the bicycle, but the drunk was my neighbor, if you know what I mean. I think we talked about him earlier. I remember seeing it. Anyway, our federal government, in their emails between Justin Trudeau and his ministers, were talking about I want to phrase this right, the political advantages of evoking the Emergency Measures Act. You're seizing people's money, taking their rights, and you're looking for the political advantage in that? That's disgusting. I have a friend of mine, well, not really a friend, my local needs store. A young lady last winter told me that she had her accounts seized. She's a single mother of one. She works at Needs, so it doesn't make a pile of money, but she donated some extra money she had to the trucker convoy, and her accounts were seized. When that happened, I withdrew $126,000 from my bank in $49,000 increments because that's all my bank would allow me to do. And I put it into other things. And I'll tell you, the TD bank branch manager called me everything but a human being. The country is pretty corrupt. And if you can't see this and you don't understand this, I get it. Some people have rose-colored glasses on your entire lives. I used to be like that. I used to think everything is great. And then when I served in the military, let me tell you a little something about the military. The Canadian military is so corrupt. I had a boss who grabbed me by the ass and ran his hand up my shoulder. There's 2 witnesses. They did nothing about it. When I asked my female lieutenant colonel, her name is Sherry Buckler. Hey, Sherry. I auto-recorded this conversation, by the way. It was April 4th or April 20th of 2021. I recorded all my conversations with my chain because they were pretty corrupt. She told me, and I'll quote, I asked her, I said, ma'am, why didn't you take my sexual assault seriously? Was it because of my gender? And she replied, yes. That's a female lieutenant colonel in the Canadian Armed Forces. Now, the same person who sexually assaulted me, I heard, allegedly, that he sexually assaulted his stepdaughter. And now the military's taking it seriously. Finally. So it's okay for him to grab me by the ass. That's okay. The same person who did that to me walked into the front office of the building I worked in and told a young lady that he wanted to wrap his hands around her long, beautiful neck. And then he mentioned her 3 little kids. They're all redheads. She had a picture of them on her desk. And he's like, love me some redheads. I don't smoke, but I used to go to the smoke pit in the morning, have my oatmeal and coffee. That's where all the good gossip happens. And she came out and she was in tears, shaking. She told us what happened. And nothing happened to this senior NCO in the Canadian Armed Forces. My warrant officer, Mark Beers, sexually assaulted 3 women at a Christmas party. He was arrested at work, but then allowed to come back to work until his trial. And he was allowed to retire with an honorable discharge. Rank has its privileges. I have a friend of mine in Ottawa who's a retired lieutenant colonel, and he left the military because of the corruption. He said at my rank and my level of experience, he said I had to get out. He was driving him nuts. And he was in Ottawa, NDHQ. He got out. He's like, the corruption, the politicking in the military is ridiculous and should never be, ever. The military and politics should not be involved in each other. The military is there to do a job. Protect Canada, number one. Protecting Canadian interests. But it's not like that anymore. It's not. It's kind of disgusting. I'm looking at buying a boat to leave Canada. I want to sell my home. This house is paid for. My 600 horsepower Camaro, paid for. I have enough money that I don't have to work. I've been a pretty cheap person my entire life and saved every nickel I've ever made, invested those nickels and did well. But I want to leave this country, a country I was willing to die for over 23 years. That's how, like, my eyes have been opened to all of this. And here in Canada, we have political prisoners. People who speak out against the government are suddenly arrested, charged with crimes they're pretty sure they didn't commit. Here in Canada, people who murder people get bail. People in Canada sexually assault people and get bail. People who don't pay for gasoline, forget to pay for their gas, get arrested and locked up, awaiting trial. Many years ago, I lived outside of Fredericton, an area called Hamwell. And I like to talk, you've probably noticed. And one day, my local gas station where I always filled up, I was getting gas and I got some coffee pods for my Keurig because I like coffee. I like coffee. And me and the girl were talking and I filled up my gas tank and I left. But a week later, I go back to top up my gas tank again because that's what I do and get some more coffee. And the young lady's like, do you remember last time you were in? I'm like, oh yeah, we were talking about something. I forget what it was. She's like, forgot to pay for your gas. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. She's like, no. She's like, I billed you for your coffee, but I forgot to bill you for your gas. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. She's like, no, I'm not going to call the cops or anything. I said, she's like, you're a local. You're here every week. We know who you are. I was like, oh, well, thank you. I appreciate it. But recently, in Dartmouth, a young lady was arrested for forgetting to pay for $69 worth of gas and is currently sitting in jail. Or I believe she's in jail. Maybe she has bail now. I don't know. How messed up does this country have to get before people will open their eyes? Canada has the world's third largest gas reserves. We're literally up to our necks in oil, which turns into gasoline. But yet, gas prices are going through the roof. They're like, well, the international markets. Listen, we should have a Canadian first energy policy, but we don't. Pierre Elliott Trudeau, young Justin's father, nationalized the oil industry basically in the 70s, it was. Anyway, and basically destroyed our oil industry at that point. You know, I live less than 100 kilometers from one of Canada's largest refineries. It is huge. A lot of people don't like gas and oil, but it is a necessary evil that we have to live with. And I'm not going to say it's evil. People think it's evil. But without oil and gas, we wouldn't have the society we have today. And I think they're trying to regress our society probably back to the 1800s. They're trying to shut down oil and gas, kids. That should be scary to you. You know, here in Nova Scotia, there's still some people without power. Last time I checked, there's about 70,000 people in, eastern Nova Scotia without power. Hard to charge an electric car, isn't it? Somebody interviewed an American power worker who came up to help Nova Scotia reconnect to power. And he was floored at the state of our infrastructure and how unsafe our electrical grid was. And he has no skin in the game. Where's all this money go? Where does all of this money go? You know, I think it was last week, the Canadian government just gave $1.2 billion to either the World Economic Fund or the World Economic something. Someone stood up in Parliament and, you know, just made a point of that. And I was like, $1.2 billion? We have people in Nova Scotia whose homes were flattened. No one see a problem here? No one? Not the smartest guy? I have a fucking brain. I have a hole in my brain, and I can see that certain things are wrong. Certain things are wrong. Anyway, I'm going off topic. I'm starting to rant and rave. This is getting long. I'm going to call it a day. I'm going to edit this, post some links to other various YouTube sites that have much better references than I can ever have. As I said, my memory is kind of scrambled. Sometimes my train of thoughts a little off. It's not linear. It's kind of choppy. It's the greatest thing about having a brain injury is every day is a new day. No, not quite. But anyway, you folks have a great day. Sorry to run so long. I don't mean to rant and rave, and I'm kind of sick. So you guys have a great day. Don't sweat the petty things and don't pet the sweaty things. And you know what I mean. Have a great day, kids.